Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I just got back from some time on the road. Great production. We've got some great interviews coming up. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danone, Israel's ambassador to the United States, Yakil Leiter, Senator Rick Scott, Scott Jennings of CNN. You might say, oh my gosh, CNN. If you've ever watched CNN, and you probably don't, and you're a better person for it, I assure you. But if you do, Scott Jennings goes viral because he is the lone conservative voice in a sea of leftists on these panels on CNN. Scott Jennings is must-see TV. He's got a brand new book coming out, got a chance to sit down with him. So a very fruitful trip, and you'll be seeing those clips coming up very soon here on the channel. In the meantime, let's do a quick state of play for the West, for Western civilization right now, in particular where I'm sitting in the United States. Tomorrow, Tuesday, November 4th, pivotal day in America. Is it an exaggeration to say American history? Why do I say that? New York City, America's largest city, the financial capital really of the world, is about to elect, it seems, an Islamo-communist as mayor, Zoran Mamdani. Now, he's a self-professed democratic socialist, but folks, he is a straight up Marxist communist if you look at his platform. And he's got Islamist sympathies as well. He was pictured recently with Siraj Wahhaj, an imam in New York City who's been notorious over the years. And his father, Zoran Mamdani's father, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, clips of him engaging in anti-American rhetoric. And Zoran Mamdani himself is viciously anti-Israel. We can go on. You've probably seen some of the clips by now. So that's number one tomorrow. Mamdani may take the reins of America's largest, most famous, and most influential city. Secondly, a little bit more overlooked, but we also have an Islamo-socialist in Minneapolis, a city of nearly 500,000 people, who may take the reins. A Somali immigrant may become mayor in Minneapolis. So that's a 1-2 punch. And now they're both self-described democratic socialists. But guess who else describes himself like that? Sadiq Khan. He's the mayor of London for the past 10 years or so now. Sadiq Khan, Democrat socialist. And look at London now, a city that's barely recognizable, folks. It was one of the great cities of Western civilization, a beacon of light in the West. And now look at London. Did you see the headlines over the weekend? A mass stabbing by a migrant on a train in the UK. I think 10 people wounded seriously. This has become par for the course in the UK. We also had a stabbing last week, a fatal stabbing, an Afghan refugee in the UK, stabbing someone to death on the street. This is a regular occurrence, like on a loop in the UK these days. Winston Churchill is turning in his grave. So you've got the Sadiq Khan model coming to America's shores. And folks, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be exposed. And that we know. But how much damage will be done in the process? We've got this unholy alliance. We've talked about it a bunch here on the live stream, of Islamists and the radical left. They don't seem to have much in common on the surface, but what they do have in common is very important to both of their ideological causes, is a fervent hatred for America, for Israel, for law enforcement, for authority, for the US Constitution, for Judeo-Christian Western civilization writ large. This is what we should be focusing on right now. If you're like me, a conservative here in America, or really across the Western world, in a perfect world, we'd be focusing on the danger of this Islamo-socialist alliance because it's real. But instead, I've spent the weekend, and many like me have spent the weekend, in between interviews at the conference that I attended, tweeting about what's basically become a bit of a civil war on the right here in America, which is a sad thing because we've got President Trump in office right now. Republicans control both the House and the Senate. and the majority of governorships in this nation as well. It's a unique moment. The culture is turning against the woke madness, especially in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Young people are turning to Christ, turning to conservatism. We've got the wind at our backs, and yet there is a small but vocal minority on the right, very vocal, and some influential figures led by Tucker Carlson, who are spending most of their time bashing Israel instead of talking about these real issues, Mamdani, all the rest, and the West under assault with mass migrant invasions of European nations, and under Joe Biden of America, President Trump put a stop to that. But now we're talking about Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. Have you heard these names? Candace Owens is another one who's notorious for this, leading the so-called woke. We talk about the woke left a bunch here on the live stream, the woke right. And this woke right is obsessed with Israel and the Jewish people. I mean, obsessed. And Tucker Carlson, look, folks, if you're watching, you may agree. I used to be a fan of his work at Fox News, no doubt. I respected his work at Fox News. Now, he left, I think, April 2023, April or May 2023. Prior to that, his opening monologues on his Fox News program were must-see TV. And he was excellent during the COVID days, on the gender madness, on the culture or the racial madness, all of it. During the Biden years, he was telling it like it is. He did a great job in his opening monologues. They were well-researched. But it always struck me that he never really talked about foreign policy too much. And when he did, he seemed to kind of have a soft spot for Vladimir Putin. I said, okay. He just completely avoided Israel. No matter what was happening in the news cycle, you know, Israel, hey, a lot of times it's at the middle of the news cycle, right? He wouldn't address it. And he also struck me in those Fox News days, when he soft pedaled Iran and said, Iran's not a threat to America. And I said, wow, okay. And I would say to myself at the time, you know, Tucker's a brilliant guy. He's doing a lot of good work, but he's got a blind spot. And that blind spot is foreign policy. But I said, well, you can't be gifted in everything, I guess. That's his blind spot. We can pick up the foreign policy ball and run with it. Let him do what he does. Let him focus on the good he's doing on the culture and all of that, because he did good work. He left Fox News spring of 2023, launched his own platform, the Tucker Carlson Network, I believe it's called, TCN. He's got a podcast. And I would say that his podcast has become the premier platform for anti-Semites, Israel haters, Holocaust and World War II revisionists, and kooks. And I don't say that lightly. And the list goes on. And it's been shocking to watch him devolve and unravel over the past, it's about 2.5 years now. Now I see why on Fox News, he never talked about Israel and didn't talk much Middle East, especially not Israel, didn't touch that. Now I see why. I don't know if Fox News said, look, we don't want you going there. You're conspiratorial. You have anti-Semitic leanings. You're not doing that on our network. I don't know. I have no idea behind the scenes what happened. But folks, he's all in now. And man, is he out there. I'll give you a few examples. I made a list here. And by the way, Ben Shapiro, the Daily Wire, obviously incredible, has the #1 podcast in America. He did a great one today. I encourage you to check it out. He posted X, I think Facebook, Instagram, it's there. And he ran down all of Tucker's, I don't want to say greatest hits, worst misses, I could say, but the people he's platformed over the past few months. And this debate's happening all weekend, and I'm tweeting about it on X. By the way, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. We've got close to 1.1 million followers, subscribers, growing every day. Join us as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Follow me on X as well, Instagram, Facebook. We're active on all these platforms posting about this. But Ben ran down a list of who Tucker's had on. And the debate, as I mentioned a second ago, has been, well, look, you know, this is he's giving them, it's the free and open exchange of ideas, but it's really not, and that's the problem. If I had a Hitler sympathizer on my show on Stakelbeck Tonight on TBN, which you can watch every weeknight on TBN, I'd press him about his beliefs. But the problem is Tucker doesn't do that. He platforms people, again, Hitler sympathizers, Stalin sympathizers, as we'll talk about in a minute, historical revisionist, Holocaust revisionist, etc., Israel bashers, and he doesn't challenge them. He allows them to express their views, and it's a massive platform. Tucker's got millions of followers on this network, on his podcast network. He's hugely influential. A lot of people don't understand. They remember him still from his Fox News days. They don't understand the rabbit holes he's gone down. So he's still a very influential voice in the conservative movement, big time, and in the MAGA movement. Although I'd argue he's not MAGA at all. We'll talk about it in a second. He's undermining MAGA. Turning Point, Charlie's organization, continues to have Tucker speaking at events. So he's very much still in the mix at the forefront of the conservative movement. So when he allows people to come on his show and just spout off lies about Israel, about Churchill, we could go on, and I will in a second with some examples, and he doesn't challenge them. That's a problem. That's bad journalism. And as I said, he engaged in good journalism when he was at Fox News on the issues he focused on. But he just lets these people spout off, and he says, if you've watched him, you know what I mean. He's got this quizzical look. Interesting. Wow. So Churchill was the bad guy in World War II. Hitler was misunderstood. Interesting. Like, this is literally the interviews. And that's why a lot of people are outraged. And I'll give you a few examples. Look, his praise for Putin we've seen over the years. He had a guy named Darryl Cooper on. He goes by Martyr Made on X, notorious anti-Israel, anti-Semitic guy, historical revisionist. He's the guy who said Churchill was the villain of World War II. Churchill, the villain of World War II. And Tucker introduced him as, I think, the greatest historian in America today. Loves the guy. You may have seen the bearded nun, as she's been called, the sister of George Stephanopoulos from ABC News, a notorious leftist. His sister is a nun, I think a Greek Orthodox nun, and she was on Tucker's podcast spouting off all sorts of lies about Israel, people accusing Israel of war crimes, genocide, apartheid, accusing Israel of persecuting Christians. The list goes on. And again, Tucker just sits there and says, wow, interesting. Never pushes back. And these interviews, and there was a radical priest, I think from Bethlehem last spring that was on, anti-Israel guy, and Tucker never presses them. Either he just doesn't know the issue and he's taking what they say at face value. He hasn't done the research, which seems unlikely, right? Because his Fox News show was so well researched. Or he agrees with them and he's giving platform to people that he agrees with. And instead of him saying it and catching all the heat, he lets them say it. And then there's plausible deniability. Tucker says, I didn't say it. I never said that. He's the gaslighter in chief. Let's put it that way. He said, I didn't say it. And then he'd say, what? We can't have a free and open exchange of ideas, freedom of speech. Amen. They can say whatever they want to say. And you can have them on. But if you don't challenge them on what they're saying, that's when you run into problems. And here's a prime example. Nick Fuentes. You may say, who the heck is that? And a lot of people are certainly with you when you say that. I believe he's 27 years old. He's got a podcast. He streams. I think it's in his mom's basement. I'm not saying that kidding. He's a very troubled guy. Foul-mouthed, profane, nasty, angry, big on racial epithets, massive anti-Semite, openly admires Hitler, and openly admires Joseph Stalin. He said as much when he appeared on Tucker's podcast last week. Tucker had this guy on his podcast. This guy who is basically a little neo-Nazi type, who loves Hitler and loves Stalin, who hates women. You should hear some of the rants. We go, and again, Ben Shapiro's got all the clips. Ben's got it all. Check out his latest. But he's a nasty little piece of work. He's a guy who hated Charlie Kirk, by the way. And Tucker professed to be a friend of Charlie Kirk. This guy hated Charlie openly on his videos, his streams. Nick Fuentes will talk about that. F-bomb after F-bomb, just a nasty little guy. And Tucker has him on platforms. Total softball interview, about an hour, if not longer. Gives this guy a massive platform, millions of people certainly watching it. I think it had here on YouTube 5.1 million views the last time I checked. And Tucker just lets this guy spout off, and he doesn't challenge him, and he shows him deference and respect. And as a result, the guy comes off sounding maybe not quite as extreme as he usually does on his own show. He still says all the madness, but he couches it. He sounds, hey, it's delivered in a conversational tone, a less threatening tone, because he's having a conversation with Tucker. And that's what it was. Tucker barely pressed him on anything. It was outrageous. And then Tucker's pictured with him afterwards with his arm around him. This is a problem. Because Tucker, again, is a hugely influential figure still in the conservative movement, young people watching, being influenced. It's a problem because people are being misled. These are open lies and falsehoods, and it's demonic ideology that's being espoused on his program, and he doesn't challenge it. By the way, a few months ago, a story emerged. Tucker said that he was mauled by demons. You might say, huh? No, really. He said I think it was the middle of the night, he was mauled by demons. I forget which platform he shared this on. Interesting, in light of the direction he's taken. Here's what he had to say about Christian Zionism. Now, I'm a proud Christian Zionist. I believe the people of Israel, the Jewish people, have a right to their ancient and ancestral land, that God has an eternal covenant with them, that he promised them that land. It's his land. He holds the title deed. He gave it to the Jews. Deal with it. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But Tucker despises that whole notion. He's replacement theology through and through. He believes God's done with the Jews, that Christians have replaced Israel in God's economy, in the prophetic sphere of things. God's done with the Jews. They're cursed. They're cast out. Christ killers. That's it. Well, I believe otherwise. And millions upon millions of Christian Zionists around the world believe otherwise as well, because the Bible says otherwise. God himself says otherwise. And we, time after time here in the live stream, we've gone through the scriptures. Starts with Genesis 12:3. We can go on to Amos 9:14, on and on and on. Joel 3:2. I don't know where Tucker is in his walk and how much of the Bible he knows. I suspect it's not much, and that he's a, quote, baby Christian. But here's what he said about Christian Zionists just last week, in the interview, no less, with Nick Fuentes, a budding little Nazi. Tucker says, quote, and folks, fasten your seatbelt. This is the same Tucker Carlson, again, who had a massive platform on Fox News just 2.5 years ago, whose father, Richard Carlson, was a great friend of Israel, by the way. Here's Tucker. He says that he dislikes Christian Zionists more than anybody. Presumably more than jihadists, communists, woke leftists, etc. He hates Christian Zionists like Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz more than anyone in the world. Wow, quite a statement. He calls Christian Zionism, quote, a heresy that he's offended by as a Christian. And he called it a kind of brain virus, Christian Zionism. That's Tucker Carlson in 2025. That's where he is now. If you didn't know where he was, now you know. And a lot of people are waking up to the fact right now about where he is. Now, that's what he says about Christian Zionism. I'll address that in a second. But the Heritage Foundation jumped in the fray as well. Now, the Heritage Foundation is arguably the most influential conservative think tank in America, based in DC. I've done a bunch over the years interviewing Heritage Foundation experts, been at Heritage Foundation events. Great organization, done incredible work over the years. The head of the Heritage Foundation today is a guy named Kevin Roberts. I don't know him. People are saying, hey, he's a good guy, but he just made a misstep here. I don't know him. I've never met him. But you may have heard about this controversy. On Thursday, I believe, he issues a video because Tucker has been linked to the Heritage Foundation pretty closely over the years. And Kevin Roberts says, we will not disavow Tucker. We stand with Tucker. And he said, I don't agree with Nick Fuentes, but Tucker can have whoever he wants to have. And he can, by the way, he can have whoever he wants on the show. But it was a tone-deaf statement that did not condemn Fuentes the way it should have, that did not push Tucker for not pushing Fuentes in the interview. We can go on. So that's Kevin Roberts. And by the way, I saw him speak last year at the NRB convention. I think it was February 2024. Kevin Roberts, who just defended Tucker on all this, in a room full of thousands of Christian Zionists. That's the ironic thing. But I don't think that Roberts knew maybe the depths that Tucker has sunk to and had done his research before issuing that statement. More is going to shake out on that in the days to come. But that's where we're at, folks. You see a bit of a civil war on the right, and it's really disheartening right now. And Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, a guy who does great work on gender and cultural issues. He doesn't touch foreign policy, really. That's okay. Everyone has their own thing. But he is continuously tweeting, hey, we need to just not criticize each other on the right at all, because we're fighting an existential threat from the demonic left, not to mention Islamism. And I agree. And that's what I'd like to spend my time focusing on when I talk about what's happening here in America and throughout the West. But this cannot go unanswered when you have a growing and very vocal, literal neo-Nazi wing, or in the very least sympathetic to that ideology. I'm not saying they're Nazis, although Fuentes, I think, qualifies. But people who hate the Jews. That's the simplest way to put it. They hate the Jews and they hate the world's one and only Jewish state. No doubt. It can't go unanswered. We can do both at the same time. We can address the left and Islamists and address this woke right that's emerging. And again, it's small, but it's vocal. And if you read X, you'd think they're massive and they're everywhere. They're really not. It's a lot of guys in their mom's basement who don't know anything about geopolitics, history, the Bible. They've never traveled. The furthest they've gone is from their basement up to get some cold pizza out of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and then back down to the basement and back online. There are a lot of young, angry, disaffected guys who've never kissed a girl. I think Nick Fuentes qualifies there. So, but you would think that they're very vocal though on X, and folks, they're hateful. I mean, vile, profane, hateful. They're mockers and they're scoffers. If you could see the comments on my X feed that I'm getting, and man, they hate the Jews. And the obsession is really interesting. And Tucker's obsession now with Israel and the Jewish people, it seems to be, he always finds a way to work it in now. For example, there is a real genocide unfolding right now in Nigeria. You may have been following this. Islamists, jihadists are slaughtering your brothers and sisters in Christ if you're a follower of Jesus like me. 7,000 Christians have been murdered in Nigeria by jihadists this year alone. 19,000 churches since 2009, past 16 years or so. 19,000 churches, Christian churches in Nigeria, burned to the ground, destroyed, vandalized. This is happening in real time. President Trump, God bless him, said on Saturday that he is designating Nigeria a country of particular concern as a result of all this. He's on it. He's threatening the Nigerian government to get a handle on it, because there have been a lot of reports that elements in the Nigerian government may be complicit in all this. So President Trump's holding their feet to the fire. Now, Tucker, in his newsletter today, finally addressed this, the genocide. Bravo. But he finds a way to work in the same commentary about the Nigeria situation, Israel, and finds a way to bash Israel, and insinuating that the supposed so-called phony genocide that Israel's been accused of over the past 2 years is on par with what's happening in Nigeria, which is a legitimate genocide that he hasn't said anything about, good old Tucker, as he's focused on Israel, Jews. Now, this is the real brain virus, anti-Semitism. It never ends well. Just ask Hitler, Haman, and Hamas where it goes, this demonic obsession with the Jewish people. It's a spiritual battle to its core. It's a true brain virus and a spiritual virus. But consider this. Nigeria is a nation of almost 240 million people. It's Africa's most populous nation, oil-rich. Israel, on the other hand, is a nation of 10 million people, only 8 million of them Jews. And the Christian population in Israel is actually growing every year. Yet Tucker's focusing on Israel and not Nigeria when it comes to the Christian issue. Matt Gaetz is another one, the former congressman. He now hosts a show on One American News. He was in the running to be Attorney General. He was President Trump's initial choice. Thank God that didn't happen, because he's revealed himself to be an Israel hater who likes to delve into the anti-Semitic innuendo now on his show, which came out of nowhere. I thought he was a friend of Israel. I didn't know. But people are showing their true face since October 7th. Steve Bannon's another one. People, again, who I respected and thought, wow, they're doing great work. This has become more than a blind spot. It's a nefarious thing. And it's widespread. Tiny, but widespread in the podcaster influencer world on the right these days. So again, I'm worried about the left, Islamists, and now I got to be concerned about my own flank, people on the right who are engaging in this madness that we expect from the left, which is viciously anti-Semitic, the radical left, pro-Hamas mobs, the Islamists, obviously. And these folks don't talk about foreign policy, by the way. There's no geopolitical knowledge. They haven't traveled extensively. You can just see it. Some are, you have comedians, different people weighing in. The one guy, Dave Smith, he's a comedian, and whatever, he's a comedian, God bless him, okay. But if you're going to spend all your time on X talking about Israel and the Palestinians, and he admitted recently he's never even been to Israel or Gaza. Look, that's fine. But if you're going to spend all day talking about it like you're an authority on it, maybe you should go. I've never been to China. I talk about China. I don't claim to be an authority on China. I don't talk about China 24/7. Same with Russia. I know a lot about China, a lot about Russia, but I haven't been on the ground there. So I'm not going to say I'm a China expert or a Russia expert. I don't talk about it 24/7 because I am not a foremost expert on those two issues, although I do know a lot about them. But this is someone who presents himself, you would think, that he's a foremost expert. You would think, man, he must have been on the ground and seen the situation on the ground. If you're talking about it 24/7, you might want to hop on a plane and go over there to add your credibility and your firsthand knowledge. You might learn something. It might actually change your mind. Candace Owens is another one. You see her in the thumbnail. And she's on a different level. Candace Owens, again, someone I used to like when she was at the Daily Wire, did great work. The Blexit campaign to get Black Americans to leave the Democrat Party once and for all. It was brilliant. She did great work back then. She was close to Charlie Kirk, and now she's treading on Charlie's grave. If you watch some of her content over the past few weeks, she's delved into insanity and rabbit holes that I can't even figure out. She's completely discredited herself on every level. So I just bring her up because she's influential still. She's still got a large following. And there's still people, when you talk about Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, they might say, oh, I like them. These are people who haven't really followed what's gone on since October 7th in the past 2 years or so. A lot of folks just follow it casually. And over the past 5 years, 6 years, they maybe saw a great video from Tucker or Candace from like 2020 or 2021, like, man, right on. And they haven't followed it closely like I do. I live and breathe this stuff. It's my career. But I think they'd be shocked. And I think now it's healthy what's happening right now. On one hand, it stinks because, again, tomorrow an Islamo-communist is about to take the reins in New York City, the largest city in America. But this has to be rooted out of the movement and discredited. When I see rooted out, isolated and discredited and exposed. That is the healthy debate of ideas. And they say, we want an open and honest debate. Folks, listen, Nick Fuentes, we should debate him and have an open and honest debate with him. Been there, done that. He's a Hitler sympathizer. He's a Stalin sympathizer. Guess what? We had this debate in World War II. Hitler and the Nazis lost. Faith, family, and freedom won. Secondly, we had the debate over Stalinism and Soviet communism during the Cold War. Guess what? They lost. Faith, family, and freedom won. So there's no need to debate communism and Hitlerism, Nazism in 2025. Two demonic ideologies from the pit of hell that have been thoroughly discredited already. So I'm not interested. But I close with this. Consider this, and we talk about this being a spiritual battle and anti-Semitism being completely irrational and insane. Really think about this. I mentioned earlier, Israel, the size of the state of New Jersey. 8 million Jews, that's it, live in Israel. 10 million people, 8 million Jews. That's it. Only 16 million Jews in this entire big old world of 8 billion people. Out of 8 billion, only 16 million Jews. 0.02% of the world's population. That's it. And yet, the world is absolutely obsessed with this tiny piece of land and this minuscule people group. Why? Don't you think that's kind of odd? Don't you think that's not a coincidence? Because people are saying, look, when Israel was miraculously reborn against all odds in 1948, after 2,000 years nearly of the Jewish people being dispersed around the world, they come back together, they reestablish their ancient homeland. They reestablished Jerusalem as their ancient and eternal capital. And thank you, President Trump, by the way. But that's a coincidence. It's just a coincidence of history. Okay, you believe that. But can it really be a coincidence? Don't you feel like something deeper is going on here when 0.02% of the world's population who have one tiny little land in the Middle East are accused of all the world's problems? Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. It's from the pit of hell. It's demonic. The devil, yes, he exists, hates Israel and hates the Jews because God chose them. Get over it. Sorry. Every time the devil sees a Jew, when he sees Israel reborn and Israel thriving, it infuriates him. Because Israel's improbable existence, I mean against all odds, is proof of God's existence. It's proof that God keeps his promises that are laid out in both the Old and New Testament. Read Romans 11, what Paul, the Apostle Paul, says about the people of Israel. Is God done with Israel, he asks? And he answers, certainly not. Look, we serve a very big God, a mighty God. He can have a great plan for Israel and a great plan for the church. The two aren't mutually exclusive. 0.02% of the world's population, yet they've been accused of overturning empires, of perpetrating the Black Plague, the Great Plague in the Middle Ages. They were behind 9/11. They were even behind Charlie Kirk's assassination, the Jews. Folks, it's truly, Tucker Carlson calls Christian Zionism a brain virus. My gosh, anti-Semitism is madness. And everyone it grips, it leads to ruin. Think of Pharaoh. Think of the Philistines, Haman, Hitler, Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians. I won't say Nebuchadnezzar, because the end of his life was very interesting if you read the Bible. The Assyrians. It goes on and on and on. The Nazis, the Ottomans, the Soviets, the czars. It never ends well. Any individual, any group, any nation that embraces anti-Semitism writ large, you're seeing it play out right now in real time with the Iranian Ring of Fire, right? Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. It never ends well. When will people learn? Generation after generation indulges in the anti-Semitic madness. And it's only intensified with the rebirth of Israel and since October 7th. So we're in a spiritual battle. And I'm glad that I had the chance today to kind of lay this out for you because, look, usually on the channel, we're focusing a bunch on global geopolitics, right? We're talking Israel, Iran, we're talking the region, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, we're talking China, Russia, we're talking Europe, what's happening there, talking about America in a broader sense than this. So this is kind of a niche issue in a way that I talked about today, but people are talking about it. And it's become very real. It's a real issue. So I wanted to inform you about it, just so you know, because I think you may hear more about this in the days to come, just so you know what's happening on the right side of the aisle right now. You need to know about this. Please pray about this, folks. And I appreciate you joining us. And hopefully this enlightened you as to what's going on. And now you probably pay hopefully closer attention to this because it's an important issue and we got to get the woke right. I mean, that influence has to be diminished and they need to be discredited. And I think we're on the road to doing that. So as always, thanks so much for joining us. God bless you. And until next time, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.